Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, let me say thank you so much for being a listener. Now, I want to alert you to our shiny new podcast website located at podpage.com. However, you can go directly to the podcast site located at www.publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can contact me through email. You can leave a voice message. You can leave a review. You can read an episode blog and frequently learn about the podcast guests. You might also want to suggest podcast topic ideas or even suggest a guest. You can also let me know if you would like to receive our podcast listener logo that you can post on your social media. So I look forward to hearing from you about our new podcast website, www.publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Public Relations Review Podcast, and have a great day.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review Podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review Podcast and to our listeners all across America and around the world. This podcast is ranked by Apple as being among the top 1% of podcasts worldwide. So I say thank you to all of my guests and listeners for making this happen. Now, question for listeners. Have you ever thought about starting your own public relations firm? Well, my guests today have done just that. In fact, they've published their book, A Practical Guide to Starting Your Own PR Firm. Joining me today are LaSalle DeGrave, APR, and founder of DeGrave Communications, and Rochelle Dickerman, MBA, APR, and CEO of RMG Communications, and they join me from the San Diego area. Ladies, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Peter.
So let's start by having each of you, or if you want to, tell me why you decided to start your own public relations firm.
Thanks, Peter. This is LaSalle, and I opened DeGrave Communications in 2004. So we've been in business for a while. I was in college, and I really started out just as a freelancer, and I was also working full-time. And over the years, I just grew the business. I went in-house a few times. I worked for public agencies, and that's actually our firm specializes in working with public agencies because we've been on the inside, but we also understand how much support is needed externally from a consultant. And so we are a full-service firm now, and I just really started it because I wanted the flexibility of being able to manage my own schedule. And that doesn't mean that you aren't responsible to anybody or you don't have time commitments and things like that. But I have a really hard time just sitting in an office 8 to 5 every single day. So that's really the real reason. And it still continues to be my drive, my why is I want to have that flexibility to be a mother, be a husband, work remotely whenever I want to. And so that's really been what's been the driving force. It's just that flexibility and freedom of time for me.
Okay.
Hi, Peter. Yes, this is Rachel, and my story is pretty similar to LaSalle's. I actually went to college at UCLA for communications. I knew really early on that's what I wanted to do. And when I ended up doing a few internships in entertainment PR, which is where I thought I wanted to go with my degree, I realized that's not what I wanted to do. So I went back to my hometown about an hour north of LA in the high desert, and I started working for one of the local cities up there. And I really just worked my way up from there and doing government public relations. So I ended up working at 3 different cities and then a large utility in Southern California. And that's where I actually met LaSalle. And, you know, she was already established with her business, even though she was working part-time at that utility. She had that business on the side, and I had several other work associates and friends that had also gone out on their own. And I just thought, you know, I really do want more of that flexibility in life. And I kind of just got, I don't know if the word's jaded, but it's just that point in your career where you're like, is this all there is? You know, and I figured it wasn't as much an agency thing of where I was working, but just having to be in the office each day. and dealing with more of the day-to-day business interactions where you're not in charge. And I finally made the move right before I turned 40 to go out on my own too and hang my own shingle, and I never looked back.
So I take it that you both now enjoy being on your own, so to speak, that you did launch it, got over whatever hurdles you had, and things are running smoothly, and you're happy that you did it.
Yes, and Rachel and I, we do something we call collaboration, where we collaborate with the competition. And so even though we both run really similar firms, really businesses that both work with public agencies specifically, we found that having each other to work with has really, sometimes working for yourself can be lonely, right? And so you actually have extended resources that you have available. We have a lot of team members that work for both of us. And so there's a lot of advantages to that. And that's actually, why we decided to write the book together, because we do the majority of our work together. And it's really a unique concept, but it works for us.
Well, now that you've done it and things are going well, I think you just said why you decided to write the book. So let's really begin to talk about the starting point for your book. What are you telling people to do first if they want to start their own PR firm?
As we started moving deeper and deeper into being business owners, we got pulled over by a lot of our friends and colleagues, and they're like, please tell me how to do this. I want something different. I either want more flexibility, I'm not happy in my job, I've kind of gotten to where I thought I should be, and is this really it? So we were getting a lot of calls to have coffee or, to go and meet with them and answer all the questions that are really in this book. So one day we just said, you know what? Why don't we write the book and just act like we're talking to our friends and giving them the advice that we had to ask other people, those lessons learned, those practical tips, how to get clients, building your brand, scaling your business, and then also those proven strategies that we hope that they might learn without having to go through a lot of the trials and tribulations we did, as we were just kind of having to learn as we were building our companies.
Yeah, and to add to that, Peter, I know you asked kind of what's that first step that we recommend. Like Rachel said, it is all laid out as if we were meeting with somebody that, quote unquote, wants to pick our brain, right? So we decided to put pen and paper and just write it all down. And so, one of the really key things that people need to understand is you may have a specific skill set. So for us in particular, it's in communications and public relations, but do you have the drive and motivation to be a business owner? Because the majority of the work that we do is not necessarily communications or public relations. So I would say that's the first step really to determining whether you want to go out on your own, because as you grow and you scale, which is one of the biggest challenges, I think, as a business owner, you're going to need to be able to decide, am I going to work with freelancers? Am I going to hire employees? And these are things that you don't learn. I was a public relations major at San Diego State, and we never had any kind of business training. And so really trying to be as business savvy as you can, learning as you grow, and determine, what kind of business do I need to set up my business. So am I going to be, like I said, are you thinking you're just going to be a freelancer? Maybe that being a sole proprietor might be the way to go. Do you need to set up an LLC, an S Corp? And we go into those details in the book with, of course, a disclaimer that we want you to check with your attorneys or accountants before taking any kind of serious advice from us, but we've been through it. And Rachel and I actually both established our firms as sole proprietorships, for example. It's very cost effective. It's a good way to get started. But as we grew and having a good network of advisors around us, our CPAs were telling us both completely, and different people, you're at the point where you're paying too much in self-employment tax. You should be set up as an S Corp. And so at that point, you dissolve the old business, you set up the new one. And so that's really one of the foundational points, because you've got to figure out what type of business are you going to be as it's categorized by the IRS. And then at that point, you can apply for an EIN number, which is your employee identification number, which is similar to a Social Security number for your business, right? So that's really one of the key things. And once you've got that set up, you are really ready to roll. That's where you can start, looking for clients, setting up your billing rates, and getting down to the nitty gritty.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I started my own firm back around 2004, I believe it was. I didn't really want to. I had come to Nashville. I was the vice president of a university for handling communications and so forth. But when the president left, my job left along with it. And it was the vice mayor, because of my background, who suggested that I start my own PR firm. And I did do that, and we started to do some business. But one of the things that kept bothering me is I said, I need to let people know I'm in business. How am I going to do that without just 2 or 3 lines that, Peter Woolfolk started a PR firm? I wanted something that's going to grab the front pages. So basically what I did was start asking myself, who do I know and what boards do they sit on? One of my friends was on one of the major organizations here, and I wanted to get, for the first major client, somebody saw a name that everybody knew. They said, wow, if he could get that one, he must know what he's doing. Well, to make a long story short, I wound up getting the Nashville Ballet. And yes, I did get some headlines with that one. But here was the deal, and that I did not talk about. When I met with the ballet, they had already had an advertising agency who was doing their advertising for them. So they didn't have any money left over to pay me. So to me, getting that name associated with me was more important than getting paid this time, because the newspaper article, helped generate a move. So what I did in terms of compensation, they gave me a handful of season tickets. So I thought, I got this big exposure in the newspaper that, Peter Woolfolk lands the Nashville Ballet. That turns a lot of wheels and opens a lot of doors for me. So I'm just saying, sometimes you have to be a little, have some ingenuity as to how you go about elevating who you are, what you're doing, and the kind of work and who you'll be doing work for.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things when we meet with people. They're kind of baffled as far as, well, how do you find your clients? And one, we hope that if you're going out on your own, you have a network, right? Mm-hmm. And those are going to be the low-hanging fruit. Being that Rachel and our firms work specifically with public agencies, sadly, most of the time we have to respond to an RFP, a request for proposal, which is, these submissions are 90 plus pages long. They take a lot of work. It's unbillable hours. And so
I do a lot of that myself.
That's how, yes, right? I think the worst part about being in this business, I'm going to be real candid about it. It's something that you don't really enjoy, but you get better at it. And once you get your foot in the door, I think we talk about this in the book, but even if you just go for that really small contract, maybe it's not super profitable, similar to your ballet experience. That's what you need. You need clients that you're going to connect with. They're going to see that you're not selling them something. You're actually you're an extension of their team. You're bringing value. You're making their life easier, and they are going to work with you over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me add another thing to that, too, because one of the other things that I did was I decided, being a small individual, part of my background that helped me get to some of these levels is that, one, without going back too far, I wound up being the press secretary for the chairman of the House Education and Labor Committee. So dealing with media and heavy-duty stuff, I got exposed to that. I had radio background, some TV background, and so forth and so on. I wound up actually being in the Clinton administration, doing some work for the U.S. Surgeon General. So the media part of it, TV, radio, satellite, all that, I had that. And so one of the other things that I did when I got here, I made a decision to go and meet the presidents of every major PR firm here, every one of them. I said, hey, I'm the new guy in town. Here's part of my background. If you've got some smaller deals and you don't have time for them, throw them my way, and I'll be glad to, take them off your hands. Well, one of them, and I'm going to probably say after the ballet, it's probably about a year later, I got another phone call from one of the presidents, and they said, well, fine, here's something that I think you might like, but you're going to have to go pitch for it. And what I did was, once I found out who it was, I went and looked it up. I went to the library. I went to Google, everything to find out. The bottom line was I had to go and pitch to do some work for the Nashville Opera. I'd never to go to opera, but what I did was, once I found that out who I was going to pitch for, I went to the library. It was going to be Carmen. I looked at the video to find out what Carmen was all about, all that sort of good stuff. So then I went down and told them, I said, hey, look, you're not looking for more season holders. You've got those. They're going to pay. You're looking for people like me to come because they're new and you want to increase your outreach. And I said, hey, that's a great idea. We hadn't thought about that. Boom. I got another great big headline in the newspaper. Now Peter Woolfolk has the Nashville Opera.
Wow.
So that helped me grow. It's really about having a lot of self-confidence, knowing that you can get things done, and willing to say, hey, I'm new. If I can help you out, let me know. And it worked.
And you're so right, Peter. That's what we really did, too. I know when I started out, I reached out to a couple of firms that I knew, too, and just said, hey, I'm here if you need anything. And it helped as I grew my business and provided that solid foundation of some cash flow coming in, because it takes time, even if you're there and ready to work, to start getting, a full roster of clients in.
Well, one of the other things I found useful, and I did a lot of it, but I had to, slice it down a little bit, was that's to sit on board of directors of organizations, because you get to meet a lot of other people who have some connections and pull and know-how and those kind of things, and that helped as well. I mean, one thing led to another, and I wound up doing work for the Boys and Girls Club and things like that. So, I mean, those are door openers as well, and it gives you additional media exposure.
It's so true, and that's one of the things we touch on in our book. We actually touch on that same fact that we were very involved years before with a lot of different boards and committees and made a lot of great connections in our line of work. So when we did go out on our own, we had those folks as the first, what I like to call like the low-hanging fruit. Okay, you're out on your own. Who are you going to reach out to? Mm-hmm. And usually they're those people. And you have to also be okay with hearing a no, not right now. And it doesn't mean it's a no. It might mean that, especially in the government world, like we talked about, sometimes there's a lot of contracts involved. They may have a firm under contract for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and until that firm's contract expires, they're just not taking on any new PR firms, and
right.
That's just the way it is. And we had a client that they're like one of our dream clients, and they went from a city in the LA area to working for one of the cities right on the Orange County coast. And we reached out, and he told us, I'd love to work with you, but we have some other people under contract. And then a couple years later, we just got an email one day out of the blue, and he said, hey, would you like to work on this project? It's small, but we really need help right now. Mm-hmm. And like LaSalle had alluded to before, that we just did such a great job. Now we have, about $500,000 in contracts just with that one agency, from doing good work, from being a person that they knew, and being able to deliver on it. So it really does work. It's just, it takes a lot of time.
Well, I think that's hugely important to say that, sometimes you do have to stick with it, because once the people have the contract, you can't do much of anything until the contract is complete and it's put up to be recompeted on. So, I mean, I've certainly done a lot of those things. I mean, it certainly works. Sometimes they expand the contract because they'll add on something to it. I did a video, again. One of the things I like about this business is that it gives you a chance to do a lot of things, and you don't have to be the person that actually does all of those things. For example, contract that I bid on for the airport here was that they wanted to produce an in-house video. Well, I can't operate a camera. I can't do any editing. I can do some writing. I can do some voiceovers. I had to go out and find and hire a camera person who could do all the editing and so forth. We bid on it. We won. And then after that, as a matter of fact, they wanted to get a smaller version of it so they can show this at an award ceremony that they went to. So that was another smaller contract that came out of that. So a lot of it is just being confident in what you can do and not being afraid to have people tell you no, because you're exactly right. Sometimes no means, well, no, not right now. And you have to understand that, and then don't be afraid to go back and ask again. Once
you start getting those contacts in place, though, and like you said, Peter, doing that great work, they're going to also refer you too. So a lot of the work we do, we're not out doing a lot of ads or paid advertisements. It's mostly word of mouth, other than doing the formal proposal process. It's a lot of people that are just love to work with us, love the services and value we provide. And then if someone comes to them, they're always referring, which is nice too.
Yeah, and I will add just on keeping relationships. I mean, really everything that we do is based on relationships. I say that to young kids that are, just going into college. Make those connections. When they're graduating, they're looking for work. You just never know where someone might end up, where your paths might meet in the future. And I just had a client this morning text me. We are doing a really small project with them. And she said, hey, I just want to let you know that we've got an RFP that's going to be coming out. I'm working on it right now. I'll let you know when it gets posted. And so, like I said, we're not working on a really lucrative project with them, but it's taking on that work. It's building those relationships that are really going to make lasting impressions, and they're going to help build your business.
Well, the good thing about doing that, too, is that they can also offer referrals, that somebody might call them and ask who should they know, or do they know anybody that can handle this project, and they can refer you because you've done good work for them. So maintaining relationships and doing good work, and that has always been one of my guidelines. I want the best person I can find to work with me. It doesn't have to be a friend. It does not have to be a neighbor. Even if you're a friend, but you don't do good work, I'm not going to bring you on board, because it's two separate things. People are going to pay you judged on the work they do, you do for them. And if it's not good, you're not going to come back again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on the flip side, you can have great friends that are also great members of your team. And I'm happy to say that is a lot of how our operations work, and we're so blessed, because I think when you have people that you work well together and you do good work, it just makes it that much more gratifying.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, what else did you discover or that you decided needed to be put into your book that people who might be considering starting a PR firm should know?
Yeah, I think one of the important things, I know when this is LaSalle, and I know when I first got started, I was working internally somewhere, and I really wanted we were expanding our family, and I wanted to work remotely or have some kind of flexibility. And at the time, in the early 2000s, that wasn't really a thing, it's crazy to even imagine that world now. That just wasn't possible. And now, fast forward, we're in 2024, and you absolutely do not need a physical office space. Rachel and I talk about it all the time. We have friends that are doing the same type of work, but I think they like that, the idea of, I have this, beautiful office space, and it looks great for optics, and it's beautiful for Instagram. But in reality, we all just need our computer for what we do, and it's not really necessary. And if we meet with a client, we're going to usually meet them for lunch, or we're going to go to their office. And so you can shave off thousands of dollars off the top. That is something that is it's not needed. It really isn't. And I encourage people, there's no shame in having a home office. Rachel and I both have home offices.
Well, I can certainly chime in on that one. I started back around, as I said, a little after 2002. And because I was being looked at for a major, to join one of the major firms, they wanted to know where was my office. So I had one of those deals where you rent some space down there. They'll answer your phone with your name. And if you need to have office space, you call them up and reserve a meeting room, and, that sort of thing. But at least I had an office address rather than a post office box, because at the time that was a no-no that they frowned on. And you're absolutely right. I think I was down there probably for about 6 or 7 years, and maybe 3 clients came down there over that time. So I don't do it again. And plus the pandemic let everybody see, as long as the work gets done, they don't care where you are. As long as it gets done well, and you give it to them on time, you could be operating from an airplane. It doesn't make any difference as long as you satisfied the agreement that we reached.
Yes, and we do work from the airplane. So I agree. I think that the lockdown that was one of the benefits, because everyone was working from home, and there was no shame in the blouse on the top and the pajamas on the bottom, right? And so I think people really welcomed it. And I think as a small business owner that works from a home office, I found it really refreshing, because people were able to realize that the quality of your work doesn't necessarily have to go down because you don't have a physical office space. So that's something, we have a whole chapter on that. And I think it's just, you got to think about the money that you're putting into your business. Thankfully, with a PR firm, for the most part, you can get started with just your computer, right? And everyone already has that. So we like to tell people, try to start out with, Rachel and I have never taken out a business loan. You know, we don't have business debt, and you really don't need it. Look at those things that are, do I need it, or is it, you know, just more vanity or a want? So we touch on that in the book as well, because you can really get started with minimal overhead.
Well, you know, your reputation precedes you. So if you've done good work for people in the past, they're willing to work with you. And you're absolutely right. The pandemic opened a lot of folks' eyes, is that as long as the work gets done, we don't care where you do it from. We want good work. We want it on time and at the price agreed upon. So if all of those things can be achieved, then, you know, fine. I could be out of town. As a matter of fact, I've done work for people out of town. So I certainly agree with it. And it's a huge issue, because I've actually seen some PR firms go out of business because they had a big palatial office. They have employees, which is different than consultants, that you've got to pay them, pay their taxes, pay their Social Security, all that other sort of stuff. And if you don't have contracts coming in, you have a problem.
Absolutely. And we both have a few employees. They are part-time, but it's still a crunch sometimes. As you know, sometimes you're waiting for a payment that may not come for several months. It gets delayed, and then you have that finance crunch where you just don't have that money, and it gets very stressful. So then it's down to, do you take out a loan? Are you going to have to start letting people go? And I think for both of us, it just makes more sense that we work with qualified contractors and a small team of staff to get the work done, and it always gets done. Our teams are very flexible. The hours we allow them to work, and they enjoy having that freedom over their life, and they give 110% all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, one of my biggest selling factors were people's resumes, and that was huge for me. I mean, yes, I did work for the Clinton administration. I mean, that's a real door opener in itself. But what I also discovered, I ran across a few. Nissan North America moved its North American headquarters here in Nashville some years back. I was very fortunate to find a couple of ladies, one who had retired as heading up the Nissan PR department. She was my consultant, so I could use her resume. The other lady moved here because her husband was with it, and before she got here, she used to run head up the National Public Radio's largest news outfit in Los Angeles. So, I mean, she was a very, very capable writer, knew media very well. So that's the kind of information I use when I put in a proposal. Here are the caliber of people who will be working on your project, and it does make a difference.
It does, and I think now you were ahead of the curve. But now with all the folks that are wanting, different work styles and traditional, we have very similar cases where we have one person that's a stay-at-home mom but does excellent work, and we had someone that had retired but still wanted to work part-time, and they both have wonderful resumes, but it's just looking outside of the box, especially if you're starting out for employees, if you're going that route, that may be a good fit, but not wanting that traditional full-time experience.
Ladies, we have actually had a very, very good discussion. I'm just wondering now, are there any points that we missed that you think we should cover?
You know what, I would love to add that this is our last, chapter of the book, and it's called Looks Like We Made It. And I think success looks differently for everybody. And so we live in this social media comparison world right now. And as an individual, as a business owner, you need to define what success looks like to you. Is it a certain, monthly income? Is it gross sales, net sales? Is it, being able to afford certain things for your business? Is it more flexibility of time? Would you sacrifice maybe income, but to have the flexibility to, have every Friday off, or be able to take off and go to the beach and work remotely whenever you like, things like that. Of course, we all have bills to pay, so you can't work for free, but try not to compare yourself to other businesses or other people that are maybe in a related field, and really look at doing some introspective work and what does success look like for you? At what point am I going to say, okay, this is a success, I've made it?
Absolutely. I think that's so important. I know LaSalle and I, and probably you too, Peter, have seen a lot of people that look like they're on, just a one-way trip up, and then they crash, their businesses crash and burn. And, you don't know all the inside specifics, but we hear story after story about some folks that make bad investments, have, put a second mortgage on their house and so forth. But their business looks all shiny and fancy, and they're bringing in new people and new contracts, but it's not always that way. So I think being really clear, whether you want to start your own business or just figure out a lifestyle of work that works for you, is what does that success look like? And I think we all have different, even the three of us would have different ways to answer that question.
Mm-hmm. Well, ladies, I think that you have given our listeners an earful today, and I really, really want to thank you for reaching out and bringing this to my attention, because I agree with you that a lot of people may want to consider going into business for themselves, and this is something for them to consider. So any closing remarks that you might have?
I think we're good with everything that we've shared.
Okay.
I don't know, do you have anything else to add, Rachel?
Well, if any of the listeners are interested in getting a copy of the book, the best place to get it is going to pressingonpodcast.com/PR book, or they can find it on Amazon or Audible.
Well, let me say thank you again. And the name of the book, so if you want to make sure that you get it, is A Practical Guide to Starting Your Own PR Firm. And the authors who joined me today to present this great information were Lizelle DeGrave. She is the founder of DeGrave Communications, and Rachel Dickman, who is the CEO of RMG Communications. I want to thank them so very, very much for bringing this to my attention. And I certainly hope that you, or the listeners, have gotten a lot from it. If you've enjoyed the show, we certainly would like to get some reviews from you. And we certainly would appreciate it if you share this with some of your colleagues as well. And don't forget also to listen to the next edition of the Public Relations Review podcast.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast.